this is the file that I'm going to be referencing. This is the example that I'm showing you guys out here. This is the Illustrator file right here. But I want to show you guys how it actually looks first on Rhino, right? As you can see, right, this grid, it has been manually built, right? It's different from the grid that you have right here. And we're doing this as a practice, right? How to build a simple grid on Rhino, right? And we'll use your guides, your O-Snap and your Grid Snap as a drafting tool. You see right here to the right that one of the first things that we need to do is define our layers. Right? We're going to have dims layer. That's 4 dimensions. You're going to have your grid layer. Now, I like to show you guys how to create sub layers. So I will create a 2 grids under grid. Whoops, that was a layer within a layer within a layer. That's not necessarily what we want, right? I want 2 layers within the grid layer, right? This one of them is going to be major, and the other one is going to be minor grid. Now I want to show you guys how to do that. We have the guides layer, which that's your drafting tools. That's your this guys right here, right? This red color. And then from there, I have a series of pen layers, right? That you can think about this as your micron pens, right? Pen 1, 2, 3 with different. Right now, they only have graphically the way to distinguish them is the color of the layer. Later on, we'll use that color on Illustrator to give it a different line weight. Okay, and I think this will be our setup for, or to begin with. All right, so these are the layers that you guys should have. Perhaps one more pen if needed. In terms of colors, you guys are free to play with those, right, and explore. Develop your own palette, right, whatever appeals to you. As you can see, I actually had to turn my background a different color because these colors were a little bit well, they were not working with my white background. However, I'm going to go to the file that I was originally working on, and I'm going to change that as well. We'll go over this again, right? A little refresher. Change our shaded view background right here in display mode. Shaded solid color right there. And I'll send it back to white. Okay. So I have, whoops, solid color, shaded, solid color, white. White didn't change. Maybe it's over here. Their appearance, colors, background, and white. There we go. Okay. As you can see, the first thing that I need to do is set up my layers. All right. So that is very simple right here. I can bring them. So one of them was grid. All right. How do you create a sub layer? Right. You have this icon right here, right next to the new layer menu. All right. I'll go ahead and click that, and I can label it, right? Major. Right. Create a new one. Minor. Right. Minor layer right there. What else? I need to bring a dims and a guides layer. Right. And I already have, if you open a default Rhino file, you already have these layers right here. So you can either use those or delete them. Right? Go ahead and recycle some of this. Right. So maybe I'll use guides for that. Rename this as dims. Right. I'm not using layer 5. So if you just press the delete button on your keyboard, you delete a layer. Additionally, you can just right click on them, and you have all sorts of tools for them, or options. One of them is delete. Renaming them. Renaming, if you do a a soft double click. I don't know if there's a technical name for that, right? But, or, right, you select it and then you click on it once, right? You select and then you click on it. You can edit the name, or you can right click on it and rename layer. Right, in layer use, as you have been able to see, it's critical when you're working on your drawings. In this case, right, we had the reference image, right, that we had locked in order for it not to move. Additionally, right, you are going to sometimes, right, want to move these layers. So if you select one of these layers, right, there's these arrows right here on the top, right, and you can work on the order of this. So I'm going to send my reference image all the way to the bottom, actually, since it's the one that I'm less using the least. Okay, I'm going to change the colors, right, of my work right here, and I'm actually missing one pen, right? So I'm actually going to right click, new layer, and I'm going to call this pen 3. Right, just like in any software, if you click right here under the name or any of these tabs, you can order by alphabetical order, or alphabetically order them, better said. That works great. Dims. In this case, I'll go back to some of the colors that I was using for the example that I showed you guys, right? So how do you edit these layers, right? Well, you click once on the color right there of each layer. You get your layer color palette. You go through the wheel right here around it, and within each of these colors along the wheel, right, you have the tones, the different tones. So maybe I select something around those colors, and it has to do with your background as well. So we'll see what works for us, right? So I'll select that color for dims. For my grid, notice that since it has sub layers, right, I'm actually going to add those colors to the sub layers, right? So I'm looking for two shades of gray, right? Darker gray and a lighter gray. We'll use the darker gray for the major one, right? So something like that, okay? And then minor, right, I'll use something light, right? Not too light so it doesn't blend in with my white background. My guides, the guides, I would definitely recommend have that. I like this hot pink right there, or red, right? Something that actually stands out as a guide, right? Something very, or this lime kind of like neon green works as well, very nice, right? Go ahead, select something like that. From there, for your pens, the pens is where you can fun with this, right? Now the idea is to start thinking about the thickness of the pens, right? So pen 1s, 2, and 3s. If you think about your micron set, right? Pen 1, pen 2, and pen 3, right? Pen 3 is thicker than pen 1, right? Pen 3 is actually really, it's like a chisel end pen, right? Or you can think of your 0.005, 0.01, etc. So for me, it works best, right, that the first one is the thinnest line, and then from there we'll just increase. And for right now, we'll just develop sort of an X medium large, small, medium, large, or thin, medium, and thick, right? Pen 1, pen 2. Whatever colors you want to assign this. Sometimes it works for me to color code it in a sort of a gamma, right? Let's say that my lightest one, it's if I select this end, I start going to either the left or the right, right? So what do I mean? Maybe the thinnest one is some sort of, let's say, purple, maybe something like purple. From there, for my pen 2, maybe it's a little bit darker tone right there. And again, this is just me trying to color code my work. Really up to you guys. And maybe a darker kind of blue for my thicker pen right there. I'm going to change this one a little bit. And this one as well, maybe a little bit lighter. And, it's just pure aesthetics and whatever visually works for you, right? I know actually some of us have a harder time seeing different colors than the rest, right? Now, as you can see, right, I started already adding some stuff on here, right, onto my drawing, right? Now, it's important that we position our work as best as we can within the grid. And I actually already did that. Let me see if there's an example. For example, this guy right here. All right. What do I mean? Well, could I move this set of lines right here so that from that end it actually touches there, right? Because I actually use the grid to build this, so actually it must fit somehow, right? So if I type move, right, select the objects that I want to move, right, enter. Now it's asking me, right, a point to move from. I actually want to try moving this from this end point, right? And that's where my O snaps are very important, right? Are very helpful. Right? They're just very helpful, and it helps me with precision, right? Which is mainly what I'm concerned with. Additionally, what else I'm looking into? Grid snap, right? Because I want to move from this end, right, and align it to any point on the grid as such, right? And I have this sharp end meeting that grid, and no matter how much you zoom, right, as I'm zooming, right? Well, actually, there you go, right? That point, this right here is sort of a glitch, a, a visual glitch, right? Because if I actually select the object, its node or point, it's actually on the grid, but graphically it's not shown that way, right? So that if that happens to you, right, which is actually common even since AutoCAD, I remember, right, there will be some sort of glitches sometimes as you zoom in enough and things might look a little bit off, right? So that work at least, right, in the sense that I have a nice edge and a nice end on this top end and another nice end on this bottom one right here. All right, so what is next? All right, so I have these three different ones, and I already started this one right here, and this one fits the grid very nicely. So I'll go ahead and work with this one. All right. The first thing that I added right here, right, or I wanted to know was some sort of some sense of dimensions or proportions. All right, how big is this? Now, let me move this right here. Let me move it as so that I'm not within the axis, right? There we go. And I'll work on this area right here. So I started adding some linear dimensions right here, right? Let me show you how to do these, right? And I'll delete them. Okay. So all of those settings are within one single menu, and it's up here, all right? And it's called dimension. Right? Inside of this dimension, right, you have assortment of types of dimensions that you want to do. The ones that you mainly will be using will be linear and aligned, as well as angle dimension. Right? So linear dimension, aligned dimension, um, angle dimension. Now from there, if you're working heavily with circles, you might have a diameter dimension or radial dimension. That's your radius or diameter. Right? Very simple how you specify the circle. Um, and from here as well, just to point out, you can get areas. You can get the length of a curve, right? That's very nice. That's the circumference of a segment, right? How long it is. Liters, etc., etc. Right? So let me show you what the difference between linear and aligned dimension is. Okay, so linear dimension, right, works with the axis, right? So if I snap, and notice that it's very important that grid snap is on, right? So that I actually snap to the grid, all right? I bring my cursor there, right? And I click, right? Notice that the command's still active, right? Because I first specified the length, and now I specify the position, right? And I'm gonna, and then you do another click, right? So that you dropped the position, okay? Now, I did a dimension string, right, in this case. Once you bring in an object, right, remember how to change the layer of it, right? Because right now this is not on the right layer, right? So if we select it, right, we have two options. We can go into either its properties right here, right, and select the layer color right here, and this should be under dims, right? Or right? We can select the object, and there's this menu on the bottom right, this drop down menu right here, that it actually tells you what layer you're on, or if you select that menu, you can bring the object that you have selected onto a new layer, right? So I have then now done my first dimension string right there, which tells me that I'm about 3 in length. Now, this already tells us a little bit about how Rhino is dividing its grid, right? And this already sort of highlights how we're going to be using the minor and the major grid, right? These are major grids right here, right? And we can see that the major grid, it's made up of 4 segments, right, on dividing the major grid, right? So it's divided in quarters, right? So 25, half, 75, and a full one. Okay, that's okay. We're not really that worried right now so much about the numbers, right? I just want us to again practice adding dimensions and at least get the basic ratio and proportions of your drawings. Okay, so what helps to continue adding dimensions is to actually start defining, right, our grid. And like I said, we're actually going to use the default grid on Rhino to trace our own grid. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to select the major grid on. Remember, how do we do that? If we click right next to, almost right next to the light bulb, to the left of the light bulb, you bring a check mark onto the layer, and that's how you know it's active, right? And that's how you specify that it be active. Very simple. We're going to use the line command. Type line, right? I use grid snap. Very important that you have grid snap, right? And I do a line, right? And from there, I can do copy. I copy from that grid snap, and I can do there, and there, right? I can maybe become a little bit faster at this once I draw a couple. Let's say I did 5. I type copy one more time, and I select a larger amount of them, so I don't have to be copying one by one by one. Right? So now I did 5, right? And then I start the command again, and I copy 5 more, right? And I bring those right there, right? And I'm gonna right click and exit. Right? I did a couple of extra ones. Right? I'm going to select them and delete that. Right? Now, that is not fully correct, right? Because we know that each of these 3 interior ones should be what? Minor grids. Right? So I have changed now the color of them. Right? So those 3 interior ones are minor, and those inner ones are major. Let me go ahead and change even a little bit more the color so that they stand out a little more. All right, so I'll turn them both darker. I don't know if that even lighter this one. Yes, yes, and we're gonna create a frame just like Jesus brought up, right? So let me show you how to do that. So again, I'll select this, right, and I can use this guy right here, the Rhino grid as a reference right there. So those 3 should be minor grids, right, and minor grids right here, right, boom, right. From here, right, and let me turn off my grid, right, so you can see what's going on, right. We have that. Now we want to repeat that on the other direction, right? Now we can do this faster, right? If I actually type copy, right? And now I can actually copy these lines right here, right? Right click to enter, move them to the side, right? Right click and do what? Rotation, right? And type rotate, enter, select those lines, enter, pick a point, make sure that ortho is on, right? And I get my drafting 8 right there, right? And I hold shift to snap to the 90-degree angle, and we have that. Now I can type move, right? And I know that that end right there should meet where? Right here, right there. And for me, it worked nicely, right? Because I have a proportionate square, right? Or proportionate square. I have a square, right? Which is proportionate on its sides. Let's say that, for example, when you rotate your grid, right, it's not, right? It's not the exact dimension on the X and the Y. Right? What command could we use to project these lines onto this one? Right? We want to extend. Right? So I can type extend, enter. That's the boundary line right there. Right? So I can extend all of these ones, and I can actually do them, right? All of these at the same time. Right? This one I have to be careful. I do have to do it manually by itself. This one's right here, right? And hopefully by now you're already kind of getting a feel for the different selection tools, right? What happens when you select from the bottom right to the upper left? You have that dash window, right? Versus if you do a left, upper left to bottom right, you get that solid window, and the command doesn't work, right? So again, anything that is within a dash window, right, will be selected. If you use a solid window, it needs to be completely inside of the selection window, right? So just keep an eye on that. It's really important that we start differentiating between that. I'm actually going to go back or fix this, right? Because in my case, that's not the right proportions for this. But I just want to show you again, right? I'm going to move this line right there. And in order to clean this up, I'm going to use trim. Yes, Jesus, right there, trim. Right? So that's my cutting object, right? That line right there, right click, and I can do a big old trim with just one selection, which is this window, and clean that up like that. And I right click, and I get that. So now we can start seeing, right? Things are starting to look a little bit more neat, right? A little bit more control, right? So we have that right there. Let me talk about dimensions, right? Because probably when you guys first insert your dimensions, and I'll go over this in a minute, right? But let me show you how most likely your dimensions are going to look when you first bring them. They're going to look like this, huge, all right? And if I go again to dimension, linear, right, and do a dimension, all right, they look like that. And then if I go to angle dimension, and I'm gonna talk slower about how to bring all of these ones, right? You start getting that, all right? Yes, right? Messy, chaotic, not legible, right? So let me show you to what's happening here, right? If you go under dimension and you go all the way to the bottom, you have your annotation style. It's a anytime that you see things are off with your dimensions, that's the spot that you want to go, all right? Annotation styles. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click there, annotation styles, and this window pops up. Now, you can create your own annotation style if you're familiar with the AutoCAD. It's much like that, right? As you can see, we're working right now with the default one right there. We have other one for an inch architectural, inch decimal, fractional. I'm just going to work with the default for right now. Right? For right now, that one's okay. Now, the important part of what I want to show you guys right here is this edit part, right? This is right here so that you select with which annotation style you're working with. This right here is to edit that one, or you can actually create a new one, right? I'm just gonna work off of the default for right now, right? So we want to click under edit. Okay, now you will get this window, right? Now, if you look at this window, we won't be able to walk through the entire, everything that you can do in here, right? But I do want to point out, right, what you have, right? You have font, right? You can change or edit the font type, right? What kind of style you want it, the height, gaps. You have text, right? Are you aligning to the left, to the right, center the text, right? One thing is the font and another one's how you align the text. Dimensions, arrows, which are the arrows that you use to your leaders, I guess you can call them, right? Or your dimension strings, right? You can actually specify if they're arrows, or you can do a dot, ticks, different types of arrows right here, so you can customize that. Length units, very important. Right now we're working with the model units, which is decimals. We'll leave it as such, right? And angular units, right? And not only the units, but the precision, right? We have in this case, the resolution. However, if we change it to inches, right? Should have, inches decimal, fractional. There we go. This is the precision, right? Again, we're not going to work with this right now, but I do want to point out where it is, because we at least sometimes will be working with eighths. Right now, the precision is set to a quarter. Right? I'm going to go back and change it to the model units, which is decimal. And tolerance, we won't mess with that. Now, you can go ahead and change all of these ones individually. Or, right, there's this nice setting on this newer version right here of the model space scale. Right now, this is set to 1, right? And I'll bring my window right here to a little bit to the right. If you go ahead and select that, right, and I'm going to type 0.5, right? Because right now it was set to 1. So actually, I'm going to do half of that, okay? I'm going to click OK. All right, it got a little bit better, right? Smaller, but still crowded. I'm going to do a right click to repeat that. Again, I go back to edit, and I start thinking, okay, so 0.5 worked. What if I actually do half of that half, which would be 0.25? Okay, it's getting better, but I still want this to be a little bit more subtle. I'm going to right click. Right? And again, this might vary depending on how big you went when you were drawing this. Okay, so don't get thrown off if rather than you getting a 3, you get a 20. Right? For example, it just depends how big you went on your grid while you were tracing your drawing. It really shouldn't affect much. So I'll go edit one more time. And what I found out to work best actually was a rather than a 0.5 or 0.25, for me it was 0.1. And I click OK. It might look very small, but it will look fine at the end. All right. Now that we have edited our line types and our dimension styles, now we can start adding more dimensions since they're not getting crowded anymore. Right. I'm going to select these ones that I have already added by holding Shift. I select both of them. Go into the layers right here and actually send them to the dims layer. Now, when you have added dimensions and you want to move them, right, you do that by its points right here. Right? So you select it and you just click and drag its points right there. And I'm going to bring it closer right there. Such. This guy has a number of them, right? Whoops, that's not the right one. That actually changes the degree. Right, so I'm gonna actually bring it back to where it should be. It should be actually this guy. Nope, not that one. It should be this guy right here. Right, so you can actually bring it really out here, or again, bring it in here. Now, you guys remember your assignments, the V-block. You guys remember that assignment right there? That it gave you the lengths, the angles. It actually gave you a center line so that you can flip it from the training manual. That's what we're doing right here, right? This is now the blueprint, right, of your design, right? We're specifying the lengths, we're specifying the dimensions and the distances from each other, right? From here, all right, let's see what else can we do. I would like to add, right, perhaps the length of this portion right here, which is up to here, and this other one. Let me show you what I mean, right? So if I go to dimension, right, linear dimension, dual dimension, do that, do that. Now, if I do that, right, I'm going to have to be changing, right, selecting this, sending it to the right layer, right? So what I should do first, right, is to actually go onto my dims layer, if that's what I'm going to be drawing, right? I select this distance right here, move it up right there so they're not overlapping, right? From there, now I can go to dimension, another linear one, and I bring this out here, right? Why? Well, because for, let's say, in this design, right, it's important for me to specify where this point is, right? So then that means that I'm going to right click, right? Bring out another dimension string now on this end right here and have them aligned. Now, dimensioning drawings, actually, it's has specific sort of standard rules when you're doing architectural drawings. One of the basic ones is that your dimension strings should be aligned when they're continuous. What do I mean? When you have that, for example, and by the way, you get that message, I'm gonna say okay for right now, right? That's not ideal, right? If we know, right, that this number and this number is adding up to this equal length right here, they should actually be together like that, right? Additionally, when you're dimensioning and you're gonna stack them like this, you wanna go from a smaller resolution, right, which is more number of drawings, and then to the largest one, right? What do I mean? Well, if actually I wanted to bring those dimensions right here, these ones, right, put them on the same end, right? That means that, I would do it as such, right? And that right there. Rather than this, guys, right, coming over. You always, always, always want to avoid this right here, right? This can really throw things off, especially, and you want to call it to the real life scenario, right? Because you're referencing this 3, right? This overall length, and you're actually crossing it by some other distance right here. So this actually might be confused that this segment from there to there, it's actually 3, and that's not right, right? So you never want to have leaders or dimension strings crossing each other, right? That's also another rule of thumbs when you're dimensioning your things right here. So dimensions, right? You want to keep them as neat as possible. Remember that this is what people will go. This is what people will go off, or will go off by, or will use, right, in order to construct whatever you have there. So you really want to be careful with these. Something else that I would like to specify, right, is this thickness right here, right, which is the same for all 3. Now this is where my linear versus aligned differentiate. Okay, so aligned, right? Well, let me show you first the wrong way of linear, right? I'm going to do a linear, and I want to do a distance from that end to that perpendicular, right? Remember, you want the perpendicular, right? You want the width of this, right? So I do that, right? And I get that. Now I'm going to bring it, let's say, somewhere up here, somewhere there, right? Now let's see why this is wrong, right? This is actually measuring, right, from that point to this point, but in a linear way. Because the right dimension should be an aligned dimension, which I'll show you right here, right? It's different, right? We go again to the perpendicular right there, and it's actually that. And I'm going to turn off grid snap so that I have freedom to where to drop it right now. But can we see that difference, right? So the align, right, gives you a linear or the linear dimension gives you just that, a linear dimension, right? Whether the aligned gives you an angular one, and I think maybe even here it's a better way to show it, right? Dimension, linear one. Let's say that I want to know the width or the length of this diagonal, right? From that to that point right there. If I use linear, right? Whoops. If I use linear, right? You see how it gives me that right there, right? It wants to give me, what is that? That's actually the width of the unit, right? The grid. That's not right, right? We know that this hypotenuse right here should be longer than one of these ends right there, and we know that this end right there at least is 25.25. So what I want is actually an aligned dimension because it aligns it to the points that I selected, right? And that's the right dimension. Now, it can be said that you can actually use aligned, right, for all of them, as long as you have, right, your OSNAP or your drafting aids on correctly, right? Now, you have to be very careful as well because let's say that you actually do this, right, and then you rather that by mistake, rather than clicking there, you click there, right, and you're gonna get that, and that's off as well, right? That's not right. So they're both powerful for accomplishing specific tasks, their own specific tasks. Right? So I'm going to delete that, delete that, delete that. That one's not right. What else? So I know how to do this. Okay, how about guidelines? Right? I'm going to go now into my guides layer. Right? Why? Well, because we know, right? I'm going to type line. There's a symmetry line at this point right here. What do I mean? That whatever is to the left of this pink line right here, which is this, it's actually the same in the right. So that's how we're using our symmetry lines or our guidelines right here, right? That, hey, make sure, right, that whatever thickness you have on this object right here is the same over here and vice versa, right? And it's also a way, right, to specify that the center of this object, right, is actually 1. Right? Because center on that. It is centered on that. And again, right now, you might not be able to see it very much, right? I'm actually even going to bring this point maybe even right there. Right? That's all we need. Actually, no, that's since the design is going all the way over here, I'm actually going to bring it right there. Okay. I can then from there do the same over here on this other one. Do that. What else? Here, for example, I have Joyce, right, which is actually interesting. Joyce, I borrowed Joyce right here. This is really interesting as well for him. Right? I think there's a little bit of maybe cleaning up to do right here because it's interesting, right? Joy is giving us right here his guidelines, but we're not really following them. Right? So, and again, I'm not trying to give him a hard time, right? I actually want to show you guys that this is the right approach to this, right? And this is what I mean by hidden geometry. Right? When I looked into his work and I asked him what were these lines, right? He told me, well, these are the lines that help me build my drawing. And that's exactly what we want, right? So you see these red lines right there? They're not part of the design, right? They're part of the DNA of the design. Right? That's what I call the hidden geometry of your work, right? So that right there, that's what should be under your guides layer, right? And then again, this is, I really like this way of showing the work, right? Because it actually shows that it has some thinking behind it. And it's not just some random lines all over the place, right? But we're dealing with symmetry, balance, right? Parallel lines. In this case, all of this or this segment right here follows this line, even though we could adjust it a little bit right here, right? So what I mean by that, if I type move, right, this line should actually be over here, right? Whoops, right, from snap end, right, from that end should be probably somewhere over here, which is the mid, right? And also, FYI, I don't know if you can see it, right? You can see it better on your screen, but Rhino, right, or and actually even AutoCAD, I don't know if you can see, but this line right here, it looks kind of like offsetted, right? It has like little hairs. It goes like a little thicknesses, right? Thicker over here, it's thinner over here. That means that that line is not parallel or orthogonal, right? Because I type line, right, and I hold shift, right, and I bring a line all along through it, right? We'll see, right, line, right, that, well, there's something off right here. I think this drawing is rotated somewhat, or I don't know, Joey. Let's go back to your standard views right there. Right? Because it seems that it's a little bit on an angle, so you want to avoid that. Right? So you want to keep things straight. But the idea behind this is the right idea. I mean, this construction line. So that's what I'm going after over here, right? So again, maybe let me bring this up a little bit darker so it kind of stands out. There we go. And right now in Illustrator, we'll be able to edit those lines right there. What else would be important for me on this logo? Well, maybe I just want to show, let's do a, and again, this varies. It just depends on what kind of logos you have, right? But let's do, I want to show you guys how to do center points, right? So you can do a line from this right there to that one, and I'll do another one to that one right there. Right? It's nice because it gives us that point right there, right? And it tells us that the center of this whole drawing area is there, right? And I think for me, right, perhaps we'll leave it there. What else might you have? You might have radiuses, right? Or so you go under dimension, right? Radial dimension, right? You see that it gives you the radius right here, approximate. Now this was made with the curve command, right? So you actually have a bunch of radiuses right here, right? Because I used a lot of mini curves to draw this. But again, when you have, let's say, something like that, and say an arc segment like that, or even something a little bit more pronounced, right? We go to dimension, uh, radial, it's a little bit more helpful in this case, right? You click on that, right, and it gives you the radius for it. And notice that you can actually bring it or drop it anywhere along that curvature. So I right click to repeat that, right, and we bring that right there. And it tells us that this guy right there has a radius of 0.58, right? And even nicer is that it actually tells us where the center of this arc is through its dimension, through its radius dimension. All right. So after that, in this case, this logo, right? I don't have much pens, right? I don't have much pens that I use for this. I mean, in the sense that I don't have inner work. Like for example, Bianca and Christian, you guys have a lot of detail or some detail, right? And it's right here as well in some parts of your logo, right? That's where you actually want to clean that up by adding different pen styles, right? Adding the thicker pen styles. To the outline. And I can actually do that right here, maybe with my outline, right? Let's say that I want to select that guy right there and this guy right here and give it, bump up the thickness from the pen 1 to pen 2, right? So now I have defined, right, that this has a different pen style than whatever's going on in here. Yep. All right. What else? let's say that actually as part of my logo, I actually want to have a frame around it. This is something that I want you guys to start thinking about, right? If you are going to have a frame around it or not. Um, and I mean sort of a bounding box, right? Let's say that actually I do, right? And I'm gonna do that, right, by doing a rectangle, right? On the grid that I already have, I'm gonna offset such rectangle, right, by a distance, right, of one minor grid unit, which is that right there. I'm going to delete the reference right here. I'm going to extend, right? Select that right there, enter. Click on all of these right here. Select this right here. Extend that right there. Extend that right there. Go around. I bring the grid right there. That right there. This one right there, and are we done? Two more. Couple more. That. Right. What do I mean? Actually, this frame is going to become my pen number 3 because that's actually going to be part of my design. That this logo is going to be within a box. All right, and I'll show you guys right now how we can see that on Illustrator right there. So I'm going to move this out here. I am going to copy. Right. I'm actually going to use this to show you guys how to copy with the reference. Right. So I want to copy. Right. This two cross lines right there, this angle, that angle right there, and all of these dimensions right here, right? But I want to copy them all at the same time, right? And I actually want them to fall on the same place that's on the original, right? So I typed in copy, select objects to copy. I am done, right? Right click, now point to copy from, right? I'm actually going to specify where these two corners meet as my reference point. And I'm going to actually bring this down here, right? And paste it right there. Right click and I exit, right? Now there's some cleanup that I need to do, right? Such as, right? This object, right? Now it's referencing that right there. And it's moving, right? One unit up. Let me turn on my, well, move it right there. This guy right here should move up, and now we're referencing actually that right there. Let's do snap, enter, right there. This guy should snap to that end right there. Bring it over here to that end. Right, bring this over here. Right, now this increase by 0.5 on both ends. I'm going to type extend one more time and extend my construction lines to those opposite corners right there. Right, bring them out there, right click. This object right here should be snapping to this end, this other one to this end. This is just cleanup, right, which again can happen a lot of times that, oh man, you make a change right here. Sometimes again it helps a lot to have your ways of kind of, you know, hacks, I guess we call them on the afternoon class, right? Hacks, little hacks. Let's say that it might be clear to someone, but maybe it's not enough. Let's add this other angle right here, right? This angle right here. So I go back to the dims layer right there, dimension, radial, no, I'm sorry, angle dimension. Angle dimension works by selecting the two lines that create the angle. What do I mean? Well, select arc of first line, right? Click that in right there. and then select second line. I click on the second line that create that angle, and now it specifies dimension location, right? So I can move, right, this angle right there. Now notice that as I move my cursor, right, the letters also flip, or the text, right? By default, when you're dimensioning, you want to have at most two different directions on your text. What do I mean? I already have this text over here running from bottom to up, right? I actually want to keep doing that, right? And I'll do it rather wrong the first time. The idea behind this is so that if someone prints this, right, you don't have to be flipping it on all four sides, right, to read it. You only flip it two sides, right? Right side up and another one side, right? You don't want to have dimensions that are kind of contradicting each other, right? They're mirroring each other, right? So you want to have those on that uh, same idea right there. And again, if you select the text right there and you move its location or position, you can change that. For me, it actually would be easier just to redraw it, dimension, angle dimension, click, click, bring my line right there, and maybe somewhere there, right there. Okay, after having that, don't forget, file, save. Okay. I think it's a good place to pause, right? I mean, I like to, eventually we're gonna bring this to Illustrator, right? And you'll see that actually we only keep one color, right? We only keep one color, which is your guidelines, right? And again, these are actually two different lines. One of them is a dashed or kind of dotted one. The other one is a center line or dash dot dash line. Right. But I think it's enough content for right now. Maybe we do that in a separate video that it's fully export and Illustrator content, right? To give you guys the chance to put this in practice. Now, again, the idea behind this is that we work with control, precision, right? And clarity, right? So that's the next step, right? And after that, we'll just bring in here and just edit some of these lines, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and click save. Before I pause this, right? Still recording. Any questions that maybe clarify right here? We're doing this good so far. All right, guys.